Sir Walter Raleigh, who had this farm in Devon, rolled his Devonshire R's to his dying day. His speech was actually parodied by Shakespeare, but he was a typical Elizabethan, renowned as a poet, statesman, and explorer, the sort of man people liked to gossip about. And he was the first to take English to the uncharted shores of the New World. In 1584, Raleigh, who'd always dreamed of setting up English cities overseas, sent 2 ships across the Atlantic. This was the first of 3 brave attempts to establish an English-speaking colony in the place he named Virginia in honor of his queen. The first of his ships made its landfall on the coast of North Carolina. In the words of the captain, very sandy and low towards the waterside. A settlement was established at a place they called Roanoke, after a local Indian expression. The second expedition to Roanoke was led by John White, a gifted amateur painter who kept a remarkable pictorial record of his experiences. At first, relations with the American tribes were good. In the next 100 years, English settlers picked up many Indian words to describe the unfamiliar scenes around them. Squaw and papoose, skunk, toboggan, moccasin, and chipmunk. American English eventually borrowed hundreds of Indian words, from wigwam to tomahawk. These first colonists also borrowed Indian turns of phrase, like bury the hatchet and go on the warpath. But the Roanoke adventure turned sour. Settlers and natives fought about scarce supplies. John White set off back to England for food and relief. On his return, he blew a trumpet to announce his arrival. His men sang English songs, but there was no answer. The Roanoke colony was deserted. To this day, the fate of Raleigh's settlement remains a mystery, but its place in history has been overshadowed. Almost a generation later, in 1607, 3 more English ships, like these, anchored in 6 fathoms of water off a wooded island. The sailors called it Jamestown, after their new king. From over the water, they could hear the cries of the native Indians, the first sounds from a vast and unexplored continent. After searching in vain down the coast for the Roanoke colony, these Jamestown settlers held on by the skin of their teeth and became the first English-speaking Americans. Many of the Virginians who lived here in Jamestown and who settled in colonies like Maryland and the Carolinas would have had strong West Country tones, like Walter Raleigh. Their distinctive burr became a fundamental characteristic of much American English. Here and there, in isolated communities on the East Coast, you can still catch the sound of those lost voices. We're in the middle of Chesapeake Bay, a vast estuary lying to the south and east of Washington, D.C. It's famous for its oysters and crabs. This is little Tangier Island. Here you can still hear a kind of language fossil, a variety of English that's probably changed very little since the first sailors from Cornwall landed here in the 1680s.
What a wretched man I am. You know, in the city this day and time, you see the devil so strong, and the people is just a-going right along with him. It's only when you accept Christ as your Savior, that you have to buckle this tide.
Bend low beneath the burden of his load. It was across our...
The speech of these islanders, who are known as Tangerines, is a first cousin to the West Country English of Jamestown and Roanoke. The local speech survives because the community is tight-knit and tradition-minded. It changes slowly because this self-contained island is at least an hour by boat from the mainland. The same families, the Crockett's, the Pruitts, the Parks, and the Shores, have lived and died here for generations. And when the men are out on the water, Tangier Island is like a children's playground.
For the age of a little child until 10 or 12 years old, until they start getting really mischievous, Tangier Island is a paradise for children because there's no crime rate whatsoever around here except for maybe a speeding ticket every now and then.
It's a nice place and there ain't a lot of traffic and all. There's just about 4 cows on this island.
One of the special peculiarities of Tangier speech is the playful use of opposite meanings and double negatives.
They say, you ain't pretty, and they mean you are pretty.
You just say that you ain't a going, which you are, but everybody does know, though. No, but you do say it most of the time.
And they like they say if they're this dress and it's real pretty, they say they ain't ugly and they mean it's pretty.
Oh, you just say it, but everybody knows what you mean, because everybody says it around here, and they know what you mean when you do say it.
Our voice, our language hasn't changed since people first moved to Tangier Island. We still speak the same accent, or so some people have told us.
The waterman's day starts at 2:30 in the morning when they gather in Ray's Cafe.
Get up early in the morning, get in about 12, 1 o'clock. It's a long day while you're out there. That's what everybody does around here, so I don't know. Have to work on the water when you get out of school.
Listening to the talk along the coast here, some would imagine they were in Devon or Cornwall. They say noise for nice, orn for on, and zinc for sink.
That's about right, isn't it?
What goes you going out?
Well, that was Gia.
The men work all day on the water, returning when they have their quota of crabs, what they call jimmies and souks.
If one boat breaks down, has any kind of engine trouble or anything, and he's not in this harbor of a night, there'll be 8 or 10 people get together and they'll say, well, he hasn't never come in yet, we better go out and look for him. And they'll go out and they'll look until they find him. They'll stay out all night long if they have to, just to find that one lost boat to help that fellow out.
There are still a few isolated language communities, like Tangier, dotted up and down the east coast of the United States. Down near Roanoke in North Carolina, there's a fishing community known locally as the Hoy-Toiders, because that's how they say high tide. Today, from Delaware and Maryland in the north to the Carolinas in the south, this tidewater English provides a vital clue to the original sound of American English. And the use of the stressed R, typical of much American speech today, finds its roots in forgotten communities like these.
The people